Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel Kalanadi. Today I'm going to review Harmony by Project Itoh. This is a Japanese science fiction novel that was originally published in 2008 and the English translation by Alexander O. Smith was published in 2010. Before I get into this book and what it is about, I want to say right away that this is a book about suicide, and if that is a triggering subject matter for you, please don't watch this because I am going to be mentioning suicide a lot. Harmony is set in the near future after nuclear war devastates the world, and in response to the damage that war and radiation has on human health, governments begin to be replaced by administrations or medical administrations that put human health above all else. Most adults have software called WatchMe installed in them, which monitors their physical and mental health and gives them a constant stream of advice on everything from their diet to actually recommending what to say and do in certain situations. The most important priority in society is now human health, and people's bodies don't really belong to them anymore. Your body belongs to society. Everyone is monitored constantly and doesn't really have any say, doesn't really have to make a choice about how they are going to be treated if something comes up with their health. And anything that could harm one's health is banned or greatly frowned upon. Things like alcohol, tobacco, drugs, like recreational drugs, and even caffeine in some cases. The narrator of this story is a young Japanese woman named Tuan Kirie. As a teenager, Tuan was befriended by a strange girl named Miach Mihie. Miach convinced Tuan and another girl named Sion to join in a suicide pact as an act of rebellion against the rules of administration society and to claim control over their own bodies when they could as children before becoming adults and having WatchMe installed and being even more integrated and imprisoned within society's rules. Miach dies, but Tuan and the other girl survive. Tuan then grows up, joins a branch of the World Health Organization, and travels into war zones and other gray areas, where she is attempting to escape the constant scrutiny of administrations and the WatchMe software. And with access to contraband and smuggled goods, she can indulge in substances and behaviors that are harmful to her health. And Tuan's motivation for doing things like smoking cigars and drinking alcohol isn't necessarily that those are pleasurable activities that allow her to escape, but she is always very aware that by using these things and doing these things, she is hurting herself. She wants to hurt herself. But then Tuan is recalled back to Japan, back into the arms of the administration, and when she returns, she runs into Sion, the other woman from her teenage suicide pact. They go to lunch together, and over lunch, Sion says, "I'm sorry, Miach," and then kills herself in public. And Tuan discovers that Sion's suicide was part of a mass global suicide event that happened at the same time everywhere. She begins investigating what caused that and begins to suspect that it is all connected back to Miach, even though Miach has been dead for 15 years. So honestly, Harmony is a pretty depressing story, and it contains some disturbing and grim content, so absolutely trigger warnings for suicide, self-harm, rape, and sexual assault of a child as well. This was difficult to read because of how grim the subject matter is. My first struggle with this book is not actually the content. As much as that disturbed me, what I actually really had a hard time with is that I never connected to the characters in the story, and chief amongst them, Tuan herself. I found her to be mostly a very one-dimensional, flat, broken, emotionless person. She's unpleasant, and I understand that some of that is because she is in a very stifling, suffocating environment that is depressing her and driving her to self-harm, and she's driven by some very unpleasant motivations. But at the end of the day, I just didn't sympathize with her or really any of these people. And I think part of that may be that I have a hard time sympathizing with characters who don't ever seem to display emotions like sympathy or empathy or care for other people, and there was a real lack of that in this book. As much as Tuan is investigating something that threatens pretty much all of humanity, she doesn't seem to be doing it because she really cares about people. She's just driven by a much, much more personal thing. And it's because it's like her whole life, everything she is, everything she does revolves around this suicide pact from when she was younger, and almost like her feelings of being a failure because she didn't succeed in killing herself when she promised Miach that she would. And I wanted to feel empathy for these people because I could kind of intuit how bad this situation was and how it would feel, how depressing it would be to live in a society like this. But I never felt those things. I never really got the emotion of the story through the writing. I really had to kind of interpret it from the actual circumstances being described. And that is a really interesting comment, given that this book is literally formatted with an emotional markup language that resembles HTML or XML. So there are passages within tags that denote what emotion somebody is feeling while they're recollecting something, or like this dialogue is in anger or passion, that sort of thing. And I really struggled with this strange formatting at first because it didn't make any sense why it's there until the very end. And I was not super happy with the actual ending. The root of my problems with this book probably comes down to one thing. I don't think it was written very strongly. Just the language, the way it's trying to express things, just didn't do a good job. This book is trying to express themes of bodily autonomy, medical care, freedom, without actually conveying the people or emotions well. And I think what it was trying to do was to replace that writing of characters and feelings and such with the markup language, but it's relying so heavily on this quirk far in advance of the reader actually understanding what that formatting is for. And yet, I think buried in this book is an excellent point about what we are willing to sacrifice, what freedoms and decision-making abilities we are willing to sacrifice in exchange for things that we want. Because basically the situation in Harmony has come about because people are willing or unaware enough to trade their freedom, their control of their own selves, their privacy, in order to gain better health and longevity. And is it worth it to do that? Are you willing to give up so much control over your own thoughts, over your own body to governments in return for just living twice as long, when that outsourcing of your own mind could lead to you maybe losing your own consciousness, not really being human anymore? And this is really about replacing our leadership, our own control with software, and within the intimacy of our own bodies. And this book does not have a happy ending. It does not come to some great conclusion that solves the problems. Tuan is not a hero necessarily, and that was quite a grim note for it to end on. So while I didn't really connect to the story, as I've thought about it more, it has made me think about my own behavior, like how much am I willing to give control of myself to the government to the healthcare industry? How comfortable am I letting, like social media platforms know more and more and more about me? Because every time I do that, I'm giving these things, these systems, more control over me. And no, I don't think that the situation in Harmony will ever actually happen. I don't think that's realistic, especially because in the real world we have much stronger protections of privacy, and especially health privacy, at least I think in the Western world. Though I feel like some beliefs about privacy and personal space and such are kind of different between the West and the East, and that may play a part in what kind of disturbed me about this book, is it's extrapolating from a society and a culture that I'm not really familiar with how they view privacy and healthcare and suicide as well. So not a perfect book. I feel like what this book wants to talk about is actually very interesting when I dig into it, but I'm not particularly sure that it succeeds very well at doing any of them, and I do lay most of that at the feet of the relatively poor writing, but it is interesting to think about. And that is everything I have to say about Harmony by Project Itoh. I would be very interested to know what other people think who have read this book, and if people have some of the same issues that I did with it. So if you have read it, leave me a comment down below. Thank you very much for watching this review. I will talk to you again soon, and until then, bye.